What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today I want to talk about the quarterback position for the New York Jets moving into 2026, but in a little bit of a different way. Okay, first of all, if you've been part of Jets Latest, then thank you to the almost 2,700 of you who have been. I don't think we're using one of our top 44 picks, any of those four, for a quarterback. I think we are building the roster around us, and that is even more prevalent now with Dante Moore's decision to go back to Oregon for another season, right? I've told you that what I really think is going to happen, it's going to be some kind of bridge-type veteran, a Jacoby Brissett, a Marcus Mariota, a Mac Jones, a Tua Tagovailoa, that kind of type, right? I do not think they're swinging big for a Kyler Murray or a Joe Burrow or anything like that. I think we're going to take those 3 first-round picks in 2027 and really use those assets to get up as high as we need to target whatever studs come out in 27 that I think is a good class with a more developed roster, with a more developed team chemistry. However, there are ways that we can still address quarterback that are not necessarily bringing in Kirk Cousins or Jacoby Brissett in 2026. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit here in this episode of Jets Latest. The first is that we have some mid-level draft picks. All the talk is about number 2, number 16, number 33, number 44. And that is where we're going to hopefully get 4 starters to really add to the quality of this roster. But we have some mid-level picks as well. First thing to note is we do not have a 3rd-round pick. We traded our 3rd-round pick in this draft to the Philadelphia Eagles as part of the Hassan Reddick deal back in 2024. So here are the other picks we have. We have 103, which is an early 4th-round pick. In the 5th round, we have 174 and 178. In the 6th round, 192, 206, and 210. And then in the last round, 218 and 242 overall. That's the draft capital we have, okay? Now, I think that it's plausible that we get some quarterbacks with a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick. Do those guys usually pop and become studs in the NFL? No. But there are some examples in recent time of guys that have become franchise quarterbacks, quite frankly. Dak Prescott is one. Russell Wilson was one. Brock Purdy, famously, was Mr. Irrelevant in the last pick of the draft. A guy like Kirk Cousins was taken in, I believe, the 3rd round as well. So it is possible, and I do think one of the paths, along with, call it a Jacoby Brissett, call it a Mac Jones, call it a Marcus Mariota. Let's say we bring in Marcus Mariota. I think one way we go about it is by drafting also someone with the 4th-round pick, with the 5th-round pick. If we do, in fact, say, one thing I've mentioned here on Jets Latest is that number 33 overall pick could be attractive to people, where the Jets trade down, say, from 33 to 36 or 37. Still get a guy like Pregnon, the guard, out of Oregon. Still get the safety Thin Mints out of Oregon with that pick. Get the guy we wanted anyway and accumulate a 3rd-round pick. Accumulate a 4th-round pick. There's the idea that maybe the Jets at number 2 overall trade down slightly, right? Still get a Reese, still get a Bain, still get a Caleb Downs, still get a Maui Noah, something like that, and accumulate a 3rd-round pick. And there are some quarterbacks out there. There are a lot of quarterbacks that at the beginning of the year in this college football season were highly, highly regarded. I'm talking within the top 5 choices of the Heisman, well, thought to be 1st-round quarterbacks, and then struggled a little bit this college football season. I don't think we're going to get, obviously, Fernando Mendoza. I don't think we're going to get a Ty Simpson, who's probably going to be late 1st round. I don't even think the old Miss Kid Chambliss is going to be available when we pick at like number 103 overall. But here are some guys who might be. Garrett Nussmeier of LSU, okay? Only played in 9 games, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But last year, the year previous to that, over 4,000 yards and 29 touchdowns was viewed as a 1st-round talent. John Mateer in Oklahoma had a really good season, got injured in the middle of the season, was literally a top 3 choice for the Heisman towards the middle of the season with Oklahoma. And then you see the previous year with Washington State had over 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 826 rushing yards. Interesting. Carson Beck is a name you know from the Miami Hurricanes, but then previous to that had over 52 touchdowns and 7,400 yards in 2 seasons as the starter for the Georgia Bulldogs, who obviously were a talented and championship caliber team. Drew Aller out of Penn State is another name, literally a first-round projected draft pick from Penn State, but then had a disappointing season, only played in 6 games for Penn State. It was a disappointing year for Penn State, largely because Aller didn't play, but in the 2 years previous to that, 49 touchdowns and almost 6,000 yards. And one that I think is interesting, another kind of guy, was a favorite for the Heisman going into this season, was a first-round talent, viewed as such from Clemson, is Cade Klubnik. He only threw for 16 touchdowns, 6 picks in 12 games this year, but previous to that last year, 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns in 2024, along with 463 rushing yards. I think some of these guys are going to be available at number 103. I think some of these guys may even be available at 174, 178. I think it is a prudent decision. Maybe not at 103. Maybe there's still another guy we like that's fallen a need to address. But in the 5th round, at 174, at 178, much like, for example, this year, Quinn Ewers was a guy that Miami took at this level who had a great reputation, fell, and then got into games, they liked what they saw, and he got some burn at the end of the year. Is he the solution for the Miami Dolphins moving forward? Not necessarily, but these guys could be in the mix in round 4 or round 5. I really like Mateer out of Oklahoma. I think he could be something. He was viewed really well as a first-round talent, as a Heisman choice. He then hurt, I believe it was his hand, and fell off a little bit. He's a guy that I think could be the goods if we have it at 103. And then in the 5th round, if Cade Klubnik is around, I say we take him. If Carson Beck or Garrett Nussmeier is around, I say we take him. And then they become a veteran, a developmental kind of guy, right? We took a chance with Brady Cook this year. He was an undrafted free agent. I think we spend a little bit more, a 4th or 5th round pick, and do it. Quite frankly, if 2 of these guys are available at 174 and 178, I'd double tap it and take 2 of these guys, let them fight it up, iron sharpens iron, behind a Marcus Mariota or Jacoby Brissett. What's the worst that can happen? They develop into a backup quarterback. Maybe it pops like a Brock Purdy does, or a Dak Prescott, or a Kirk Cousins does. And if they don't, it's really no, it's not like it was a pick we were going to get a stud, tight end anyway, or a stud linebacker anyway, right? I think it is a low stakes pick, and I would not be mad if they spent a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, or even 2 of those picks to try and get some of these quarterbacks that might still be there and were highly regarded. Again, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, John Mateer, Oklahoma, Carson Beck, Miami, Drew Aller, Penn State, Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. If those guys are available in the 5th round, okay, at picks 174 or 178, I say we pull the trigger on one, if not both of them. If one of them is around that the Jets actually like, maybe like a Mateer at 103, I say we pull the trigger. Here's another way that we could address it. Again, I don't think this guy is the answer. Do I think the Jets are going to do it? Not necessarily. But if you remember, there was a guy drafted in the 5th round last year who fell and became a starting quarterback for an NFL team for the back half of the season. And his name was Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, with the Cleveland Browns, had his ups and downs. We all know the story of Shedeur. We all know about him falling. We all know that he's Deion's kid. But he did flash at times. Showed that he could play in the NFL. I'm not saying he's the answer. But also remember, the Cleveland Browns have fired their head coach, Kevin Stefanski. All right. And I don't know if the new coach wants to go at it with Shedeur. The Browns also, if you remember, traded picks with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. They have 2 first-round picks. And the conventional wisdom was that they were targeting this year to draft high and take their quarterback of the future. And they may still do that. They may do that with their top 10 pick. They may do that by packaging picks and going up. They are still in the market for their franchise quarterback. They are not sold on Shedeur. Their general manager, Andrew Barry, said Shedeur is, quote unquote, still very much a work in progress, like many people, and said that the 2-3 starter may be internal or external. And here's the thing. If you are not going to go at it with Shedeur Sanders, you need him off the roster because you don't want all the hullabaloo that's going to happen. He was a 5th round pick. We could also trade a 5th round pick a 4th-round pick to acquire Shedeur Sanders, give him a 1-year try, and if it doesn't work out, no skin off our back. It's low risk. Why? Because in 2027, we go after it with our 1st-round picks, paging Arch Manning, paging Dante Moore, paging Lenoris Sellers, and other opportunists that could be there at that point with all the draft capital to go as high as we want in 2027. That is another approach that could be taken using a mid-level pick. I'm not saying it's going to happen. What I think is best is sign a stable veteran, a Mariota, a Cousins, a Brissett, something like Mac Jones, something like that, and then I pick in the 4th or 5th round, I take 1 or 2 of these quarterbacks that are available, throw it up against the wall and see if it sticks. And if it doesn't, no shame, we go after it in 2027. I would not, however, use one of our 4 top 44 picks in order to do it. Personally, I like Mateer as an option, and I like Klubnik as an option, but we shall see. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Thank you again to everyone who's subscribing to the channel, watching the videos, liking these videos, commenting. Let's see what some of the comments are from the Jets Latest regulars. We've got RTW BP7, a regular, says, gotta say I enjoy your show. You don't spend it bashing the Jets, Woody, or even the coach. It's a nice change of pace. We all know AG had to be better. No need to bash him every show and spend half the time saying you want him gone. Give him 2026. It'll come down to the quarterback. I actually think they're going to give him 26 and 27, but we'll see, and it does depend on the quarterback play. Then he says, we need a big-time wide receiver. I think it's going to be number 16 overall. Breece Hall is solid if he stays. And then on to D tackle, and solid linebackers and a solid safety. I've talked about safety as a position of need. I've talked about the linebackers and D linemen that could be out there. The Reuben Baines, the Avro Reeses, and others that could be there. And I do think that's going to be the priority, right? I have said this with number 2 overall. I have said this with number 33 and 44 overall. I've given you options like Byard in free safety, in free agency at the safety position. So I'm with you right there. Daniel Orlowski, 7333, says, there's only one safety worth a premium pick in this draft, and it's Caleb Downs. He says, after that, the guy from Oregon is maybe a 3rd-round value. I agree. Caleb Downs is a premium pick. I don't think we spend 2 on him. If he's there at 16, we take him. I don't think he's going to be there at 16. And then we're talking about Thin Mints from Oregon. This guy says he's a 3rd-round pick. I think he might be there and a target for us at 44 overall in the middle of the 2nd round, and I would not be mad at that. We've talked about that here on Jets Latest. And if you subscribed, you know about that because you check us out all the time. And then Pete Mango, 6247, says, love Bain at 2. I've been talking about Reuben Bain. Outside chance we take a quarterback at 16. No. I say the mid-level picks. I don't want Ty Simpson at 16 or anything like that because then we're dropping him in with expectations. I'd rather a Mateer, a Klubnik, a Beck, a Nussmeier without the expectations as a 4th or 5th round pick. I think there's guys that people aren't talking about that will go. Not Simpson, not Moore, that are not NFL caliber. Now we're talking about these quarterbacks I'm mentioning, the Allers, the Klubniks of the world. But 2 or 3 of the other guys, Mike O'Reilly. It has to say teams don't want other teams to know about their interest, and these guys are a little bit better than Dart. Oregon's tight end would also be an awesome addition. He's talking about Sadiq, I believe, who is one of the top tight ends in the country. But here's the thing. We spent the 2nd-round pick on tight end last year in Mason Taylor. We just re-upped with Ruckert, right? I think tight end room is set, and it's going to be Mason Taylor. Hopefully he's healthy. We spent the 2nd-round pick. I like Mason Taylor, along with Ruckert, who we just extended. So I think tight end is not going to be a position of high priority for us. I think we have our number 1 and 2 tight ends set. But I appreciate the comments, as always. I appreciate the comments. Engage with me on social media at Spittin' Speeds. And if you don't know, now you know I am also the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM, Channel 87. I'm here to help you win your leagues and win that cash. I also host In-Game Live on Sports Grid. So many ways for me to help you out, being on social media, on radio, on TV, being a better fantasy player and a better sports bettor. But if you're just caring about the green and white and you want to know what we're thinking about from a roster perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a player perspective, with real insights, with objective insights, with stats, quotes, analysis, and all the real, Jets Latest is the place to be. Tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. Thank you again to everybody. Keep it locked here. I'm here all the time giving you the latest on the Jets, Jets. But for this episode of Jets Latest, we out of here. Peace.